Just 4 days before the general midterm election in Illinois, and the race for Illinois governor is heating up. Some interesting developments over the past 24 to 48 hours or so. Good morning, I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. You can chime in live and local at 217-629-7970. You can also email bishoponair@gmail.com. But we talked briefly yesterday about the threats, the threat of violence against the Republican candidate, Darren Bailey, that a 21-year-old now charged with threatening a public official and leaving a voicemail to the state senator saying that he was going to mutilate and kill him and his family. So this is obviously very concerning. So we'll touch on that. But also a new political ad has been released by People Who Play by the Rules PAC that essentially says that the Democratic incumbent, Governor J.B. Pritzker, is a racist, and he needs to be punished for that by being voted out of office. So we'll get to that as well. But you're welcome to chime in on these and other things as we see the race for Illinois governor heating up quite a bit. Now, I haven't seen the details quite yet, but President Joe Biden's expected to be in Illinois campaigning with Democrats, and I imagine that Governor J.B. Pritzker is very much involved in that. You also have the Vice President, Kamala Harris, expected to be in the Illinois area this weekend. So one headline is Harris fights for Democrats' future and her own. And another headline is that Biden trying to save Democrats. So you can see the president on the campaign trail making the stump. And you've also seen the former President Barack Obama making the stump as well. But threats of violence in a controversial ad make the final days of Illinois governor pretty contentious. And something that, as we get more details about what happened with this threat of violence against the Republican candidate last month, a man left that threatening voicemail on Bailey's campaign. Actually, I think it was left on his State House office, but it said that he would mutilate and kill Bailey and his family. Scott Lennox is charged with felony counts of threatening a public official and harassment. Now, Governor J.B. Pritzker, he did condemn this on Twitter, and he said that this is obviously not acceptable. He said the rhetoric and division we're seeing across the country is unacceptable. Hatred in any form has no home in Illinois, as he shared the Chicago Sun-Times article on this. And in particular, the details there are rather alarming because it wasn't just threats of violence against Bailey. It was threats of violence against his family. They also made threats to the school that Bailey's been involved in. It's a private school, an academy, and threats were made against that. And they had to actually go on a lockdown just as a over security measure. So again, the governor condemning such threats, saying that hatred in any form has no home in Illinois. Now, yesterday, the Republican candidate, Darren Bailey, he was asked about this after he voted early down in Clay County, and he walked outside the Clay County Courthouse and was asked about the violent threat and if he agrees with the governor that hate has no place in Illinois. And here's State Senator Darren Bailey.
Well, I agree with that, and I've said that before, but yet he is the very person that is, creating a lot of this division. And as a matter of fact, it was, perceived, I believe, one of his ads that this person was watching when he got so angry at me. So we have got to unify our people, and I'm not seeing that message. When someone stands up and calls someone for office a threat to democracy, that's what I consider extreme. And I think this man is extreme, and I think the people of Illinois know it, and I think they're going to show it next Tuesday.
Will you accept the election results on Tuesday?
I've already stated that I would, and the best part of it is I want to make sure that people understand that there's still time to sign up to be a poll watcher or an election judge. We are encouraging people to participate, in the process.
So you heard one of the questions there was, will you accept the election results? Because that's something that Pritzker put out there. And Bailey saying, yeah, he's already said he would accept the election results and encourage people to get involved being a poll watcher. But prosecutors told the Chicago Sun-Times that an ad made Lennox angry, leading into an argument between Lennox and his friends. And then Lennox allegedly made that voicemail phone call to Bailey's Springfield office line. Now, earlier this week, the Pritzker campaign sent sent the Bailey campaign a letter asking the Republican challenger to accept the election results. He said the letter said, "Election denialism is a dark plague that threatens the very foundation of our democracy," the letter said. "In the time of unparalleled division, it's important we campaign as leaders and among our candidates promise to respect Illinoisans' wishes." Now, Bailey, again, he said that he already stated he would accept election results and encouraged people to become poll watchers. Now, Pritzker is expected to host President Joe Biden this week, today, for a Get Out the Vote rally in the final days. Biden this week characterized those who question election outcomes as a threat to democracy. Here's some of what Biden had to say. "As I stand here today, there are candidates running for every level of office in America, for governor, Congress, attorney general, secretary of state, who will not commit to accepting the results of an election and they're running in. This is a path to chaos in America," he said. "It's unprecedented, it's unlawful, and it's un-American," he says. So Bailey again said that that's the type of rhetoric that's dangerous. I want to hear from you, 217-629-7970. That's the phone number, and we'll go to the phone lines. Good morning, you're on WMAY.
Well, I'm going to vote for Bailey. I don't think that politicians or anybody else should be afforded special laws to protect them. I mean, just an average citizen gets threatened on the street, he ought to be treated just the same manner, probably even better.
Well, and one thing that was made clear from Bailey and his wife, Cindy, who was also standing next to Bailey outside the Clay County Courthouse yesterday addressing this has no place anywhere, not just in politics. It has no place in politics. It has no place anywhere. Nobody should tolerate these types of violent threats.
I mean, how many times has just an average citizen, you've seen it in the paper on the news, been threatened and sometimes killed, and the government and the police knew all about it? They don't get afforded any kind of special treatment. Why should a politician?
Well, again, it has no place anywhere. And political violence itself is abhorrent. Violence, period, is abhorrent. Crime is abhorrent. Hate crime is abhorrent all across the board. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
These Democrats, they do it all the time. Election denial in 2016, 2020. He's not a legitimate president. Blah, blah, blah. They can all shut up. You know, if people don't see this, you're stupid. Get a brain. They've been doing this all the time. Election denial. Okay, we deny the election. Count the votes by hand like we used to. Elections take days and weeks now instead of a day. Give me a break.
Well, and I would venture to say that we live in a country where you can voice your opinions. And if your opinion is that you don't trust the election outcome, that's your opinion. Now, whether or not that degrades our constitutional republic or trust in the system from voters, I mean, again, that's an individual's opinion as to whether or not they trust election outcomes, especially considering that our elections are tabulated by computers and you've got a flood of mail-in ballots that are going on, and even a story here locally about some guy who went to go vote twice in the primary. Well,
exactly.
It's after the primary. The primary's been settled, and we're just now finding this out. Did that vote count?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's your opinion, and for people to say that your opinion is dangerous, that's an interesting argument that I don't think a lot of people are tolerating.
The left is the dangerous ones. I'm sorry. They did all the rioting. They do all the screaming and crying. It's not the right.
Got you down. I appreciate the call. 217-629-7970. Getting more of your thoughts. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Hey, good morning, Greg.
Hey.
Yeah, I believe, I believe in what the last caller was saying. I think we need to go back to count the ballots by hand. And we never did this, but India did. Dip your finger in the blue ink. With all this technology, my car won't run. It takes longer to count votes. You name it. So. The world, I'm 60 years old and I've seen so many changes in my life, and very few have been for the better. Maybe in the medical field, but everything else is down the tubes.
I appreciate the call and getting more of your thoughts here with WMAY. The heated rhetoric, we just reviewed some of the comments from State Senator Darren Bailey in response to the threatening voicemail he got. And he says that it's the rhetoric from the other side saying that Republicans are dangerous, they're a threat to democracy. He says that's what's extreme. That's what's driving people to behave in a violent manner towards others. And curious your thoughts on this. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Good morning, Bishop. Always a pleasure, sir. And
it's been a while since I've heard from you. It's good to hear from you, David.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you. My whole thing is Republican, Democrat. I think what the baseline is, as American people, we all just want the same thing. We want to make a nice wage. We want some good health care. And we just want to make sure our stuff is still in our house when we come home. And like in the last caller talking about, you're separating yourself from another group of people. You never know when a Democrat might actually have something that you would be interested in hearing.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe me, I mean, everybody who was a Trump supporter is still supporting Trump at this point, and we already know he just took his ball and went home. He got upset. So it's just, instead of separating yourself from another party just because they're that party, maybe you should stop and listen to what they're actually having to say and see if you can find some common ground.
Well, and I think that's the same for the other side of the aisle as well, right? Democrats will just brush off Republicans as extremist MAGA instead of actually listening to what they're saying. And what they're saying is crime's out of control, taxes are too high, inflation's out of control, our foreign policy's a mess. But instead, Democrats just say, you're an election denier. You better accept the results that haven't even come in yet. How are you supposed to accept the results that haven't even come in yet? One last call here before the break. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Did I really just hear that guy say that? Did I really just hear that last caller say that? Do you know how many times I've tried to have a civil conversation with a liberal and I get blown up on and the conversation leads to an argument and never talked to again?
You know, this happens to me when I have conversations about gun control and the Second Amendment and how they don't seem to mix. All of a sudden, if you try to raise a substantial point, then it turns into a yelling match.
It's unbelievable. Like your afternoon host, he won't even answer my calls because I disagree with him. He literally screens my calls. I've tried to call him for 2 years now. 2 years. And he will not take my phone calls.
I can't speak to that. He hosts his own show. I host mine. I take all calls. So 217-629-7970. Got a call coming in, but I can't take it because I got to take a break. But we will be back with more your calls, but also to review this political ad that's getting some controversy, heating things up with just days left before the November 8th midterm general election. So stay tuned for that here with Springfield's Morning. All right, we've been talking about heated rhetoric during the gubernatorial campaign, and in particular, with just a handful of days here. Last segment, we talked about the threat against Senator Darren Bailey, the Republican candidate. Somebody left a threatening voicemail saying they were going to mutilate him and kill him and his family. Not a very welcoming thing to hear. But Bailey saying that seemed to have been spurred on by political advertising from Pritzker, characterizing Bailey as a threat to democracy or a threat to rights and so on. So that's at play. But then you've got the People Who Play by the Rules PAC, which is primarily funded by conservative financier and the owner of Uline Shipping containers, and that's Richard Uline. He's given People Who Play by the Rules PAC millions and millions of dollars. And they've been putting out some pretty heavy-handed ads, I guess is one way that you could characterize it. And in particular, this one ad is really getting a lot of attention, and it's called Last Dance. And I'm just going to play this for you because it's interesting. It starts out with an image of Governor Pritzker dancing on stage with other people in the Chicago area swaying back and forth, and then it cuts to a news anchor talking about a story from 2018, and then it has a Chicago alder person reacting to that, and then the announcer closing out the ad again. Here's 30 seconds of it.
What's more painful than watching this? Hearing what Pritzker says about black elected officials when he thinks no one is listening.
Newly released FBI recording of Democratic gubernatorial candidate J.B. Pritzker is causing a deep split in the African-American community.
Of all the African-Americans I can think that are sort of like qualified as least offensive is Jesse White. Emo's a little more crass.
This is a slap in our face, taking our community for granted. This is not the kind of leadership that we need at this time.
Punish Pritzker for his racism.
So, again, you've got this ad that is circulating and says punish Pritzker for his racism. And if you didn't really hear clearly the tapes there from the FBI wiretap with then Governor Rod Blagojevich talking to private citizen Pritzker at that time as to who would be taking over the Senate seats vacated by then President-elect Barack Obama. That was a whole issue back in 2008, if you remember, right? Pritzker had called to kind of do some, political jockeying of sorts, and was captured on tape talking about Secretary of State Jesse White being the least offensive of African Americans to take the U.S. Senate seat, being appointed by then Governor Rod Blagojevich. Well, we know how that saga played out. Blagojevich ultimately serving a handful of years of a 14-year sentence for that, being commuted by former President Donald Trump. That's a different story, but ultimately people who play by the rules pack using that wiretap tape that was revealed back in 2018. Having Pritzker make, not really that great of comments about African-American leaders in politics, saying that Emil Jones Sr. was too crass and Jesse White was the least offensive, which... you can take away from that whatever you want. But you also heard there from Chicago Alderman Anthony Beale. What's fascinating is Pritzker's going to be with Anthony Beale a little bit later on today, and I imagine they're going to talk about this and condemn this ad. And even Secretary of State Jesse White, who's not seeking re-election, put out a statement for voters saying that Pritzker doesn't have a racist bone in his body and called the ad offensive and urged voters to ignore it. Said to manipulate a taped phone conversation and to use it in a political commercial as it reflects the governor's views is highly offensive. I strongly encourage the people of Illinois to ignore this desperate political ad. Pritzker's campaign told a political blog that the ad's an attempt to suppress the black vote, and it must be coming from a losing campaign. So fascinating to see all of that play out as well. It is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk. We've got more coming up here, so stay tuned. It is Springfield's dependable news now.